Now, I've got Australia permanent visa. How am I qualified for citizenship? When should I apply for citizenship? So this video, I'm going to talk about these two requirements of being your presence in Australia and then your contribution. Now, the only requirement on its surface is that you must spend three out of 4 years in Australia. 3 out of 4 years in Australia. Then, before you apply, 12 months before you apply for citizenship, you must reside in Australia 9 months. So 9 months out of 12 months being in Australia. Now, this is general requirement, resident requirement. The reason I'm saying contribution, it's when candidate asks me, approach me, say the timeline, right? How long they're going to process? How long they're going to process? Why some others got citizenship approval in 3 months? It took me about 2 years. Why is that? So for instance, I received my citizenship in about 3 months time. Because you always think that a general requirement about residential requirement, you did not consider that the government want to check your profile, and then they cannot assess your application without considering the documents you present to them. Which means if you want to be considered faster for intimate relationship, citizenship application, you need to demonstrate who you are. Although the mandatory requirement is residential requirement only, so that it's no mandatory requirement. You have to provide CV, payroll, things like contract, things like that. But if you want to fast track your citizenship, the only tip I'll be given is that you provide you as a contributor to our economy. This might include contracts, employment contract, your payroll, something reference letters, right, from colleagues. That I did help quite a few candidates going through this part really fast, providing that. So when to submit your citizenship application, as long as you meet the residential requirement, being you live in Australia for 3 out of 4 years. Okay, 3 years out of 4, meaning after your permanent visa approval. Now, it does not calculate from the day of you enter Australia. It calculates the time that you being a regular resident of Australia. Okay, so this stay, it can be someone, for instance, they spent 3 years as a student in Australia, and then on the 4th year they became Australia's permanent resident. Actually, after they spend the first 12 months of being Australian permanent resident, they can then apply citizenship, because that was being 4 years, right? Even the day they spent in Australia for the first 3 years, they were on a student temporary visa. Okay, so 3 out of 4 years is regular resident. You were a legal resident. You have some type of visa. Okay, so but you have to remain Australia permanent residence in the next 12 months before you apply, right? So that 4 years calculate from your date of entry to the date you're applying. That 4 years you have a valid visa. As long as a valid visa, doesn't matter if temporary or permanent. Okay, so that explains well for you. Now I will explore some of information candidate asked me. How am I going to renew my permanent residency if I don't want to apply citizenship? Now, for you to renew one, that requirement is that we have 2 types of scenarios. One being you spend your Australia 2 out of 5 years. So 2 out of 5 years. When you're spending 2 out of 5 years, on the 5th year before expiring, your permanent visa expiring, you submit a returning resident visa. 2 out of 5 years, submit returning resident visa. And they will process in weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. And you have another 5 years of returning resident visa. So the length of renewal will be 5 years. If you, however, did not spend 2 out of 5 years, spend 1 year, it can be any time between 1 day to 2 years and less than 2 years. Okay, so in that scenario, that your permanent residency will be awarded for 1 year only, provided you have a strong Australia ties that you must demonstrate. I have other videos talking about how to provide Australia ties and when to apply. Of course, we have been approached by some candidates. They ask, they say, okay, my permanent visa, I'm in Australia onshore now. My permanent residency is going to expire soon, but I can't find a job. I need to go back to my home country. Do I apply now or do I just leave? If you're visa expiring really soon, okay, or probably in a few months time, and then you won't depart Australia, and then you won't be coming back before the expiry date. Now, before expiry date, you must apply returning residence visa before you depart. Really remember that part. So, meaning someone have to depart with a visa. Make sure that you apply before you depart, okay? Because if you left Australia without visa, forgot about that, we have candidates in that situation. They forgot to renew their returning resident visa. They actually spent in Australia anyway, 3 or 4 years, but they forgot this has to be renewed. So on the day of departure, that the border officer told them, you don't have a visa. If you won't have visa, come back. Of course, we really panicked. But I told them, because they will be leaving for 2 weeks, I said, we don't have time, because you need to draft the application, you need to submission, okay, and it was midnight, so we have time to do that. So I said, told them that, okay, depart first, we'll do that when we have time, and when we submit it, we got her returning resident visa, approved it before she returned back to Australia. So we actually received a returning resident visa in the first week she was in her home country. Now what happened that create a gap, because on the day of departure until she received her returning resident visa, she was not a permanent resident. So even she spent time 3 out of 4 years in Australia, because she has a few days of gap, she could not be eligible for citizenship. She had to wait another 1 year. Okay, so remember, even you are in Australia, make sure your visa is updated. If you are not Australian citizen, if you're not in Australia, if you're Australian citizen, you never need to worry about that visa thing ever again. But if you're not Australian citizen, check your permanent residence. Do remember, leave a departure of Australia with a valid visa. Because with a valid visa, even you didn't have enough time waiting for the visa approval, the reason you left Australia with a valid visa is different to someone left Australia without a valid visa, especially when you are departing for a long term. Okay, so I don't want anyone to have any gaps when they're in Australia. Check your visa grant letter. You have expiry date. It should be the date, 5 years from the date your permanent visa is approved. Okay, so when to apply? At least before 3 months. 3 months before apply, you can apply. Don't wait until last minute, and then you decide, I need to leave and not have a visa. Now that create a gap, because that gap will not allow you to apply Australian citizenship straight away. Because of that gap, you need to be Australian permanent resident for 12 months before you're applying, right? Before applying. So because of that gap, the calculation start again, right? So I hope this one help you. Don't forget to subscribe my channel. I'll keep uploading documents, informations for you to share. Thank you.